Welcome to Dreamtale Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is 11 Floors. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. 11 Floors begins now. And when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. 11 Floors. Nobody in Meridian Heights knew anybody else. That was the unspoken rule of the building, as fundamental as the cracked tiles in the lobby or the faint smell of damp that clung to the stairwell no matter what season it was. 11 floors, 11 apartments, 11 separate lives stacked on top of one another like mismatched books on a shelf. People nodded in the lobby the way strangers nod on a train platform. A brief, meaningless gesture before returning to the privacy of their own thoughts. The building itself was old, built in the 1960s when the neighborhood still had ambitions. Its elevator was a relic from that hopeful era, a narrow metal box with a sliding gate that rattled and groaned on its cables like an elderly man climbing out of a chair. Residents who had lived there long enough had developed an instinct for its moods. Some days, it rose smoothly. Other days, it hesitated between floors, shuddering as if reconsidering whether the journey was worth the effort. Everyone knew, in the back of their minds, that the elevator would fail someday. They simply assumed it would fail for someone else. On the night of October the 17th, a storm moved over the city with the slow, deliberate menace of something that had been planning its arrival for weeks. By 8 in the evening, rain was hammering the windows so hard that conversations became impossible unless you raised your voice. By 9, the street below had become a shallow river, and the old oak tree in the courtyard was bending at angles that made it look like it was trying to touch the ground. By 10, the power flickered 3 times in quick succession, a warning that nobody heeded, and then went out entirely. Suki Tanaka was 12 years old and alone. Her mother worked the night shift at a packaging warehouse across town and wouldn't be home until 6 in the morning. This arrangement was not unusual. Suki had been looking after herself on weeknights since she turned 11, a fact that her mother carried like a stone in her chest, but could not change. They lived on the 5th floor, and Suki had gone down to the lobby to check the mailbox. Her mother was expecting a letter from the immigration office when the lights died. She was inside the elevator when it happened. The cabin jerked once, hard enough to throw her against the wall, and then stopped. The emergency light, a single amber bulb behind a plastic cover, came on, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Suki pressed the button for the 5th floor. Nothing. She pressed it again. Nothing. She pressed the emergency call button, and somewhere deep in the building's mechanical heart, a bell began to ring, thin and distant, like a sound heard underwater. Suki sat down on the floor of the elevator, pulled her knees to her chest, and waited. She was not the kind of girl who screamed easily, but the walls of the cabin seemed closer than they had been a moment ago, and the amber light made shadows where there shouldn't have been any, and the silence between the rings of the emergency bell was the loudest silence she had ever heard. Kenji Oda lived on the first floor and had done so for 31 years. He had been the building's caretaker once, back when the management company still employed one, and although that position had been eliminated a decade ago, he had never quite stopped doing the job. He still swept the lobby every Tuesday, still replaced the light bulb above the entrance when it burned out, still kept a ring of spare keys in the drawer beside his bed. The building was, in a sense that he would never have articulated aloud, the closest thing he had to a family since his wife had passed. He heard the bell. It was faint, so faint that at first he mistook it for something in the storm, but it had a rhythm that weather did not. 3 rings, pause, 3 rings, pause. He put down the newspaper he had been reading by candlelight and tilted his head. There it was again. Kenji moved through his apartment with the certainty of a man who could navigate it blind, which, given the darkness, was essentially what he was doing. He found his flashlight in the kitchen drawer, slipped on his shoes, and opened his front door. The stairwell was pitch black and smelled of wet concrete. He aimed his flashlight upward, and the beam dissolved into nothing after 2 flights. The bell was clearer here, definitely coming from the elevator shaft. He walked to the elevator doors on the first floor and pressed his ear against the cold metal. "Hello," he called. "Is someone in there?" A pause, then a voice, small and muffled. "Yes, I'm stuck." The elevator stopped. Kenji's chest tightened. It was a child's voice. "Are you hurt?" "No, I don't think so, but I can't get out." "What's your name?" "Suki. I live on the 5th floor." He knew the name, vaguely. The girl who sometimes collected the mail in the evening. He had seen her once or twice, always alone, always quiet. "Listen to me, Suki. My name is Kenji. I'm going to get help. The elevator is old, but it has a manual release mechanism. We just need the right tools and a few extra hands. Can you stay calm for me?" "I think so." "Good. I'll be back, I promise." He moved to the elevator's service panel, a small metal door set into the wall beside the shaft. He had opened it many times over the years to reset the system after minor jams, but when he pulled the manual release lever, nothing happened. The mechanism was seized, probably rusted from years of neglect. He tried again, putting his full weight into it. The lever didn't budge. Kenji stood in the dark stairwell, breathing hard, and made a decision. He couldn't do this alone. For the first time in years, he was going to knock on his neighbors' doors. Diane Mercer, on the 3rd floor, had not slept properly in 4 months. She was a nurse on the night shift at the city hospital, and her body had lost the ability to distinguish between day and night. Even on her nights off, she lay in bed with her eyes open, listening to the building settle around her, counting the hours until dawn. Tonight she had been lying in the dark, listening to the rain when the power went out. She had barely noticed. Darkness was her natural habitat now. The knock on her door was so unexpected that she sat up as if someone had shouted her name. Nobody knocked on Diane's door. She had moved into Meridian Heights 6 months ago, after her divorce, and had exchanged perhaps 30 words with her neighbors in all that time. She opened the door to find an elderly Japanese man holding a flashlight, breathing as if he had just climbed a mountain. "There's a girl trapped in the elevator," he said, without introduction. "She's 12. She's alone. I can't get the manual release to work." Diane was putting on her shoes before he finished the sentence. It was not something she thought about. After 15 years of emergency medicine, Her body responded to the word trapped, and the word alone, and the word 12, the way a musician's fingers respond to a familiar chord. They went down to the first floor together. Diane knelt beside the elevator doors and spoke through the gap where the doors met, her voice calm and warm in a way that years of talking to frightened patients had made automatic. "Suki, my name is Diane. I'm a nurse. I live on the 3rd floor. Can you tell me, are you standing or sitting?" "Sitting." "Good. That's smart. Are you having trouble breathing?" "A little. But I think it's because I'm scared, not because of the air." Diane smiled in the darkness. The girl was perceptive. "You're right. That's exactly what it is. Here's what I want you to do. Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4. Breathe out through your mouth for 6. Can you try that for me?" She heard Suki breathing on the other side of the metal doors. In, hold, out, and something in Diane's own chest unclenched. This was what she was good at. Not the silence of her empty apartment, not the fluorescent purgatory of the hospital break room, but this, being needed, being useful, being the steady voice in someone else's storm. "We're going to need more people," Kenji said quietly beside her. "The release mechanism is stuck. We need tools, a pry bar maybe, or a heavy wrench, and someone who understands electricity." Diane nodded. "I'll go up, you stay with her." She took the flashlight and began climbing the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the hollow stairwell. 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor. She knocked on the door of apartment 6. Marcus Webb had been staring at his laptop screen when the power died, and now he was staring at nothing. The sudden darkness had caught him in the middle of a line of code, and for a moment he had the absurd thought that the blackout was a personal attack, the universe's way of telling him to stop working at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. He lit a candle, poured himself another whiskey, and sat back down. Marcus had lived on the 6th floor for 2 years, ever since his wife had taken the house, and with it, most of his reasons for going outside. He worked remotely, ordered groceries online, and communicated with the world almost entirely through screens. He could go a full week without speaking to another human being, and often did. It wasn't loneliness, he told himself, it was efficiency. When Diane knocked, he opened the door with the expression of a man who has been asked to solve a problem that is not his. "There's a child trapped in the elevator," Diane said. "We need tools, a heavy wrench, a pry bar, anything." Marcus looked at her for a moment, then sighed. In the back of his closet, beneath a layer of dust and regret, was the toolbox from his old life, the life in which he had spent weekends building bookshelves and repairing the porch railing while his wife read in the garden. He hadn't opened it since the divorce. The tools were excellent. He had always been particular about tools. "Give me a minute," he said, and closed the door. He came back with the toolbox and followed Diane downstairs. On the 7th floor, she stopped and knocked on another door. It took a long time to open. When it did, a thin man in his 60s stood there, holding a candle that made his face look like a painting by Rembrandt. "Mr. Brennan?" Diane raised her voice. She knew, as everyone in the building knew, that the man on the 7th floor was nearly deaf. He was a retired music teacher who had spent 40 years surrounded by orchestras, and the frequencies had gradually stolen his hearing until only the lowest notes remained. He played his piano at odd hours, deep, resonant chords that vibrated through the floor. And nobody complained, because complaining would have required talking to him, and talking to him required shouting. "There's a girl trapped in the elevator," Diane shouted. "We need help." Mr. Brennan stared at her, then at Marcus and his toolbox, then back at Diane. He held up one finger, disappeared into his apartment, and returned with a heavy iron pry bar that looked like it belonged in a 19th century workshop. "My father was a mechanic," he said, in the overloud voice of the profoundly deaf. "He always said, 'Never throw away a good lever.'" The three of them descended the stairs together. The building, which had been silent for years, was beginning to make sounds that had nothing to do with weather. On the 9th floor, Mrs. Park had been sitting in her kitchen with her cat on her lap, drinking barley tea and listening to the storm. She was 76 years old and had lived alone since her husband died 8 years ago. She was Korean, and she had come to this country 45 years ago with a suitcase and a certificate in electrical engineering that nobody here wanted to recognize. So she had taken a job maintaining elevators for the city's transit authority, and she had done it for 30 years, and she had been good at it. And then she had retired, and now she drank barley tea and talked to her cat. She heard the commotion in the stairwell, footsteps, raised voices, the clang of metal on metal, and opened her door. A young woman she didn't recognize was climbing past with a flashlight. "What's happening?" Mrs. Park asked. "Someone's stuck in the elevator. A girl. We're trying to get her out." Mrs. Park set down her tea. She put on her cardigan. She picked up the thermos she always kept warm on the counter, a habit from her working days, when hot tea at 3 in the morning was the difference between staying alert and making a mistake 40 feet above the ground. Then she walked down 8 flights of stairs, slowly and carefully, holding the railing with one hand and the thermos with the other. When she arrived on the 1st floor, she found a small crowd gathered around the elevator. The old Japanese man was kneeling beside the doors, talking to the girl inside. A tall man with a toolbox was trying to force the manual release lever with a wrench. A thin older man was standing by with a pry bar, waiting for instructions. The nurse was coordinating, moving between the group and the elevator doors. Mrs. Park watched for a moment. Then she set down her thermos, walked to the service panel, and studied it. "You're forcing the wrong mechanism," she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was small and gray-haired and wearing a cardigan with a pattern of small flowers. She did not look like someone who knew anything about elevators. "The manual release on this model. It's a Westmore 1960s series. I can tell by the panel layout. Requires you to disengage the electromagnetic brake first. That lever controls the door lock, not the brake. You could pull it all night, and nothing would happen." Marcus stared at her. "How do you know that?" "I maintained these elevators for 30 years, Mrs. Park said, as if she were telling him what she had eaten for breakfast. "The brake release is behind the secondary panel above the main one. You need a flathead screwdriver and steady hands." She looked at Marcus. "May I see your toolbox?" He handed it over without a word. Mrs. Park selected a screwdriver, opened the secondary panel with 2 precise turns, and examined the wiring inside with the flashlight Diane held for her. "The power surge damaged the brake relay," she said. "I can bypass it, but I'll need someone up top. There's a manual override on the motor housing on the roof. Someone has to release the cable tension from above while I reconnect the circuit down here." Kenji looked up the stairwell, 11 floors to the roof. "I'll go," said a voice from the shadows. Jay Kowalski was 17 and lived on the 11th floor with his father, who was rarely home. His father drove long-haul trucks and was gone for days at a time, leaving Jay in charge of an apartment that consisted mainly of empty pizza boxes and gaming equipment. Jay had responded to the loneliness the way 17-year-olds often do, by creating his own world. He knew every inch of Meridian Heights, not just the hallways and stairwells, but the spaces between them. The maintenance shafts, the utility closets, the roof access hatch that was supposed to be locked but wasn't because the lock had rusted through years ago. He had been sitting on the stairs between the 10th and 11th floors, listening to the rescue effort unfold below him, too uncertain to join in. He was not good with people. He was good with spaces, with structures, with the hidden architecture of things. When Mrs. Park mentioned the roof, he spoke before his shyness could stop him. "I know the way," he said, stepping into the flashlight beam. "I've been up there before. There's a hatch in the mechanical room above the elevator shaft." Diane looked at Kenji. Kenji looked at Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park looked at Jay with the steady, measuring gaze of a woman who had spent 3 decades trusting her life to the reliability of young men's hands. "You'll need someone with you," she said. "Someone strong enough to hold the cable release lever while you check the motor housing. It takes about 40 kilograms of force." "I'll go," Marcus said, surprising himself. He had already surprised himself 3 times tonight. By opening his door, by bringing his tools, by staying. And he was beginning to wonder if surprise was simply what happened when you stopped hiding. Jay led Marcus up the stairs at a pace that left the older man breathless. 10th floor, 11th floor, then a narrow door that Jay opened with a practiced shoulder shove, revealing a concrete room filled with pipes and humming machinery. Humming even in the blackout, because some of the building's mechanical systems ran on water pressure rather than electricity. "Here," Jay said, pointing his phone's flashlight at a heavy metal housing bolted to the ceiling. "That's the motor. The cable release should be on the right side, a red lever." Marcus looked up. The housing was 8 feet off the ground, and the lever was partially obscured by a tangle of cables. He dragged over a maintenance ladder that had been leaning against the wall and climbed up. "Can you see it?" Jay called. "I can see it. It's stiff." Mrs. Park said 40 kilos of force. Marcus gripped the lever with both hands and pulled. Nothing. He repositioned his feet on the ladder, braced his shoulder against the motor housing, and pulled again. This time the lever moved, slowly, grinding against years of neglect until it clicked into position. From somewhere far below, muffled by 11 floors of concrete and steel, they heard a sound that might have been a cheer. While the rescue operation had been growing on the 1st floor, the building above had been slowly waking up. On the 2nd floor, Anna and Leo Costa, twins 20 years old, university students who shared an apartment because neither could afford one alone, had emerged from their door when they heard Diane climbing past for the 2nd time. Anna was studying mechanical engineering. Leo was studying literature. Between them, they had the perfect combination of practical knowledge and the ability to explain things clearly under pressure. "What can we do?" Anna asked, already pulling her hair into a knot, the gesture she always made before tackling a problem. "We need someone to relay messages between the roof team and the ground team," Diane said. "The stairwell echoes too much to shout." Leo positioned himself on the 6th floor, the midpoint, while Anna went down to assist Mrs. Park at the service panel. Within minutes, a human communication chain stretched from the roof to the lobby, voices passing information up and down the dark stairwell like a living telephone. On the 4th floor, Priya Sharma had been trying to get her baby daughter back to sleep when the noise became impossible to ignore. She opened her door and found Leo standing on the landing, relaying messages in a voice that carried with theatrical clarity. "What is going on?" she whispered, her baby on her shoulder. Leo explained. Priya's face changed. She was 32, originally from Delhi, working 2 jobs to support herself and her daughter after her husband had returned to India and stopped answering his phone. Her own daughter, Mira, was only 14 months old, but Priya understood with visceral immediacy what it meant to be a child, alone, trapped in the dark. "I'm coming down," she said. She carried Mira down 4 flights of stairs and joined the group on the 1st floor. There was nothing technical she could contribute. She worked in a bakery and a laundromat, and her knowledge of elevators was limited to pressing buttons. But she sat down beside the elevator doors and began to sing. It was a Hindi lullaby her own mother had sung to her, a song about a river that carries worries away while you sleep. She sang it softly, almost under her breath, and on the other side of the metal doors, Suki went quiet and listened. On the 8th floor, Yuki Hasegawa, a young photographer who was almost never home, stood in her doorway with a camera around her neck, watching the relay chain with wide eyes. On the 10th floor, the Konstantinov family, grandparents, parents, and 3 children, packed into a 2-bedroom apartment, had heard everything. Grandmother Konstantinov was already in the kitchen, preparing a pot of soup large enough to feed the entire building. Down on the 1st floor, Mrs. Park was working with the concentration of a surgeon. Anna knelt beside her, holding the flashlight steady and handing her tools when she asked for them. The service panel was open, revealing a nest of wires that looked to everyone except Mrs. Park like absolute chaos. "The relay is here," Mrs. Park said, touching a small component with the tip of her screwdriver. When the power surged, it fused the contacts. "I need to bypass it and connect the brake circuit directly to the emergency battery. It's not elegant, but it will give us enough power to move the car down 1 floor to the 5th, where the doors can open." "Is it safe?" Anna asked. "Safer than leaving a child in there all night." Mrs. Park's hands did not shake. She had done this kind of work in worse conditions, on top of elevator cars, suspended 30 stories above the ground, in the middle of the night, when the only light came from a headlamp. This was, by comparison, almost comfortable. She stripped 2 wires with practiced efficiency, twisted them together, and wrapped the connection with electrical tape from Marcus's toolbox. Then she reached for the small radio that Leo had found in Kenji's apartment and pressed the talk button. "Roof team, this is Park. I'm ready to reconnect the circuit. I need the cable release held in position. Can you confirm?" A pause. Then Leo's voice from the 6th floor. "Message going up." A moment later, from higher in the stairwell, "Roof confirms. Cable release is locked. Marcus is holding it." Mrs. Park nodded to herself. She touched the 2 stripped wires to the terminals of the emergency battery. There was a spark, small, blue, decisive, and from inside the shaft came a sound that everyone recognized, the deep, mechanical groan of the elevator motor engaging. Suki felt the cabin shudder. Then, slowly, it began to move, downward. The sensation was strange, not the smooth glide of normal operation, but a series of small jolts, like a heartbeat. She pressed her hands against the floor and felt the vibration travel through her fingers. On the 1st floor, Kenji stood in front of the elevator doors with the pry bar in his hands. Diane was beside him. Priya had stepped back, clutching Mira, her lullaby interrupted by the sound of machinery. Mr. Brennan stood ready, with his hands spread wide, prepared to catch whoever came through the doors. Unable to hear the motor, but feeling its vibration through the soles of his shoes. The elevator reached the 5th floor. Mrs. Park disconnected the circuit. The motor stopped. The electromagnetic lock on the 5th floor doors released with a click that echoed in the stairwell like a gunshot. Kenji and Marcus, who had sprinted down 11 flights of stairs in what might have been a personal record, inserted the pry bar into the gap between the doors and pulled. The doors resisted for a moment, then slid open with a screech of metal on metal. Suki was standing in the middle of the elevator, blinking in the sudden wash of flashlight beams. Her face was pale, and her hands were trembling, but her eyes were clear. "Hi," she said. and then everyone was moving at once. Diane reached her first, checking her pulse and her pupils with professional swiftness. Kenji put his hand on her shoulder, a gentle, careful touch, as if she were made of something precious. Priya was crying, though she couldn't have explained exactly why. Mr. Brennan simply opened his arms, and Suki, who had not been hugged by anyone other than her mother in as long as she could remember, walked into them and stayed there. Jay stood at the edge of the group, watching. He had come down from the roof with oil on his hands and something new in his chest. A feeling like a door opening in a room he had thought had no doors. They gathered in the lobby. There was nowhere else to go. The power was still out, the storm was still raging, and nobody wanted to climb back up the dark stairs to their empty apartments. So they sat on the floor, and on the steps, and on the old wooden bench that had been in the lobby since before any of them had moved in, and they passed around Mrs. Park's thermos of barley tea. Grandmother Konstantinov arrived with the soup. She came down the stairs slowly, her grandson carrying the pot, her granddaughter carrying the bowls, her son carrying the bread. She spoke almost no English, but she didn't need to. She ladled soup into bowls and handed them around with a firm nod that said, "Eat." Nobody refused. The soup was extraordinary. It was borscht, deep red, thick with beets and potatoes, and cabbage, with a swirl of sour cream on top that caught the candlelight. Marcus, who had eaten nothing but takeaway noodles for the past 2 years, took one spoonful and felt something crack open in his chest. In the candlelight, people began to talk, not about the elevator at first, but about smaller things, the weather, the building, the soup. Then gradually, the way conversations do when people are tired and relieved and sitting close together in the dark, the talk became personal. Kenji told them about his wife, who had died in this building 12 years ago, and about how he stayed because leaving would feel like leaving her. Diane told them about her divorce, and about the insomnia that had followed, and about how tonight was the first time in months she had felt awake in a way that mattered. Marcus said almost nothing, but he sat with his toolbox at his feet, and his hands wrapped around a bowl of soup, and his face had an expression that the others could not quite read, but that Yuki from the 8th floor captured in a photograph she would later call the best she had ever taken. Mrs. Park told them about her years in the elevator shafts of the city, about the satisfaction of understanding how a machine worked, and the loneliness of being the only woman on every crew she joined. When she finished, Anna reached over and squeezed her hand. Jay told them about the roof, about the way the city looked from up there at night. He spoke quickly, nervously, as if he expected to be interrupted, but nobody interrupted him. Priya told them about India, about her daughter Mira, who was asleep in her arms, and who would, she hoped, grow up knowing the names of the people who lived around her. The youngest Konstantinov child, who was 6 and supposed to be asleep, asked Suki if she wanted to play cards. Suki said yes. They sat in the corner of the lobby and played a game whose rules seemed to involve a lot of laughing and very little logic, and the sound of their laughter drifted through the building like something warm. The power came back at 4 in the morning. The lobby lights flickered on with a buzz, and everyone squinted and blinked like animals emerging from a cave. The sudden brightness felt like an intrusion. It made the lobby look shabby and ordinary again. Just a room with cracked tiles and a broken elevator, not the candlelit sanctuary it had been an hour ago. People began to stand and stretch. The storm had passed. Through the lobby windows, the first gray light of dawn was visible on the horizon, and the street below was littered with branches and debris, but otherwise calm. Suki's mother arrived at 6, as she always did, her face tight with exhaustion from the night shift. She found her daughter asleep on the bench, covered with a blanket that Mrs. Park had brought down from the ninth floor. Beside her, the youngest Konstantinov child was also asleep, a deck of cards scattered between them. Kenji met her at the door and explained what had happened. She looked around the lobby, at the empty soup bowls, the thermos, the candles that had burned down to stubs, the toolbox sitting open on the floor, and understood that something had happened here that was bigger than a stuck elevator. She bowed deeply to Kenji, then to Mrs. Park, who was sitting on the stairs with her cat in her lap. Then to each person in the lobby: Diane, Marcus, Mr. Brennan, Jay, the twins, Priya and Mira, the entire Konstantinov family. "Thank you," she said, and her voice broke on the second word. In the weeks that followed, the building changed. The changes were small at first, so small that you might not have noticed them unless you were looking. A corkboard appeared in the lobby, hung by Kenji, on which people began to pin notes. Mrs. Park offered to teach anyone who wanted to learn about basic electrical repairs, and Jay was her first student. Diane started sleeping again. Not perfectly, not every night, but enough. She left her door slightly open on the evenings when she was home, and the smell of her cooking drifted into the hallway like an invitation. Marcus began building something in his apartment. Nobody knew what it was, because he hadn't told anyone. But the sounds of sawing and hammering that came through the floor were a comfort to Mr. Brennan below, who couldn't hear them but could feel their rhythm through the floorboards, steady and purposeful, like music. Anna and Leo organized a monthly dinner in the lobby. The first one was awkward. The second one was less so. By the third, Grandmother Konstantinov was teaching Suki how to make borscht, and Priya was teaching Leo a Hindi lullaby, and Yuki was photographing everything with the quiet intensity of someone who has finally found a subject worth staying home for. The elevator was repaired by a professional company 2 weeks after the storm, gliding between floors with a hum that was almost pleasant. But people took the stairs more often than they used to. They said it was for the exercise, but really it was because the stairwell was where you met people, on the landing between the 3rd and 4th floors, or the 7th and 8th, or the 10th and 11th, and the conversations that happened in those in-between spaces were becoming the best part of living in Meridian Heights. Suki still collected the mail every evening, but now, on her way back to the 5th floor, she stopped. She stopped on the 1st floor to say hello to Kenji. She stopped on the 3rd floor to wave at Diane. She stopped on the 9th floor to drink barley tea with Mrs. Park and her cat. And by the time she reached her own front door, she had traveled through 11 floors of something that felt, finally, like home.